They found a forest ranger tied to a tree, weak, bleeding, and minutes from death. No one knew who had done it, or how he was still alive. Then came the shocker. A stray dog, starved, wounded, and alone, had refused to leave his side. What that dog did next changed everything. Deep in the heart of the wilderness, a forest ranger was found bound to a massive tree, alone, weak, and moments from death. No one knew how long he'd been there, or who would find him. But what saved him wasn't another human being. It was a stray dog, one nobody expected. For 15 years, Ranger Daniel Brooks had dedicated his life to protecting the Greenwood Forest, a vast stretch of wilderness where danger and beauty lived side by side. Every morning, before the sun had fully risen, Daniel would patrol the winding trails, his footsteps steady, his eyes sharp. To him, this forest wasn't just land. It was home he'd rescued countless injured animals, stopped poachers, and even guided lost hikers back to safety. Locals often said Daniel knew every tree and every rustle in the leaves. But lately, he'd noticed strange signs, broken branches, tire tracks where there shouldn't be any, and the haunting echo of distant gunshots. Still, Daniel pressed on. Protecting the forest was his duty, and no threat could shake his resolve. What he didn't know was that this day's patrol would lead him straight into the most terrifying and miraculous encounter of his life. The afternoon sun hung low, casting long shadows across the forest floor as Daniel followed a faint trail of boot prints. His instincts screamed that something wasn't right. The forest, usually alive with chirping birds and rustling leaves, had fallen eerily silent. Every step echoed louder than the last. Then he saw it, a makeshift trap buried beneath a pile of leaves, and beside it, the shattered remains of a rifle shell. Before he could react, a rough voice growled from behind. "You shouldn't have come here, Ranger." Three masked men emerged from the trees, their eyes cold and unflinching. Daniel reached for his radio, but one of them struck it away. Within seconds, they overpowered him, binding his hands and forcing him to his knees. They tied him to a massive oak tree. One man sneered. "Let's see how long your forest protects you now." Hours passed. The forest grew darker, the air colder. Daniel's wrists ached from the rough rope cutting into his skin. Every sound made his pulse quicken. The snap of a twig, the whisper of leaves. He knew predators roamed these woods at night, and he was completely defenseless. Then, from behind the trees, came a soft rustle. Daniel froze. Yellow eyes glimmered in the fading light. He braced himself for a wild animal's attack, but instead, a thin, scruffy dog stepped into view. Its ribs showed through its fur, its tail low but wagging cautiously. "Hey, boy," Daniel whispered, his voice hoarse. The dog tilted its head, studying him. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, two lost souls in the middle of nowhere. Then, slowly, the dog stepped closer, sniffing the air, as if it could sense Daniel's pain and fear. The stray sniffed at the ropes binding Daniel's hands, whining softly. Its eyes darted from the knots to his face, as if it understood his struggle. Then, without hesitation, it began tugging at the ropes with its teeth. Daniel winced as the fibers bit deeper into his skin, but hope flickered in his chest for the first time. Minutes passed. The dog pulled and chewed, growling softly in frustration when the rope refused to loosen. Finally, exhausted, it stepped back, panting. Daniel's heart sank. He watched helplessly as the dog disappeared into the dark forest. "Please, don't leave me," he whispered weakly, but the silence didn't last long. Moments later, the dog returned, carrying something metallic in its mouth. It was a sharp piece of rusted metal, likely from an old trap. The dog dropped it near Daniel's hands and began scraping at the rope again. Slowly, strand by strand, the rope started to fray. Daniel twisted his wrist, ignoring the pain, until finally, the rope snapped. He was free. He stared at the dog in disbelief, his voice trembling. You saved me." The dog wagged its tail once, almost as if it understood every word. Daniel's hands trembled as he rubbed life back into his numb fingers. His throat was dry, his head spinning from exhaustion. He could barely stand, but the dog nudged his leg gently, urging him to move. "You want me to follow you, huh?" he whispered, his voice cracking. The dog barked once, then turned, trotting deeper into the forest. Daniel stumbled after it, trusting the animal more than his own instincts. Each step felt heavier than the last. His vision blurred, and he nearly collapsed until the dog barked again, louder this time. Through the trees, Daniel spotted a glimmer of moonlight reflecting off water. A small stream. He dropped to his knees, scooping handfuls to his lips. Relief washed over him. The dog drank beside him quietly, tail swaying. For the first time that night, Daniel realized this wasn't luck. The dog was leading him to survive. Guided by the dog, Daniel pushed through the endless maze of trees. His legs burned, his body screamed for rest, but the animal never slowed down. Every few minutes, it turned back to make sure he was still following, its glowing eyes full of determination. Dawn began to break through the treetops, painting the forest in soft gold. Then, in the distance, Daniel heard faint voices, his team calling his name. Over here, he shouted with the last of his strength. Moments later, 2 rangers burst through the clearing. Relief flooded their faces as they ran to catch him before he fell. The stray dog stood a few feet away, watching silently as Daniel was helped up. Before anyone could react, the animal collapsed from exhaustion. A medic rushed to check on it, and that's when they noticed the faded leather collar around its neck. Engraved on the tag was a name, Scout. One of the rangers gasped. Scout had belonged to Ranger Miller, the man who vanished 3 years ago in the same forest. The truth hit Daniel hard. The dog that saved him had once lost its own master here, and still chose to protect another. Days later, Daniel sat by Scout's bedside in the ranger station's small infirmary. The once-forgotten stray now lay wrapped in a warm blanket, breathing softly. When Scout finally opened his eyes, Daniel smiled through the tears he'd been holding back. "You're safe now, buddy. You're home." Word of Scout's bravery spread quickly. Locals began calling him the guardian of Greenwood Forest. Visitors left treats and flowers at the station gate, grateful for the dog who had saved a man's life. Daniel made a promise: Scout would never be alone again. He filed the adoption papers himself and built a small wooden house for him beside his own. Every morning, they returned to the forest together, the man who once protected nature and the dog who protected him. And every time the wind whispered through the trees, Daniel swore he could feel a silent thank you from Scout's first master. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with others. Subscribe to our channel for more real-life stories of courage, loyalty, and miracles that prove heroes come in all forms, even with 4 legs and a heart full of love.